Okay, we can start. There are a lot of people here, which is nice.
Yeah, well, I'm very glad to see all of you guys are attending this meeting. First of all, hello, my name is Okan Bozat, and I will be doing a presentation to you about landscape astrophotography today. I'm very pleased that you guys invited me here to present about the topic as the subject. Is there anybody else who will speak about the event, or should I start directly from the presentation?
You can start, I guess.
Okay, no problem. Let's try screen sharing first. Am I allowed to share my screen?
It should be.
Okay, I will just share this part. Okay. Do you guys all see it? Is it clear now?
Clear.
Okay. Well, welcome to the landscape astrophotography presentation, guys. I'm Okan Bozat. I'm an architect who lives in Muğla. I also do astrophotography on the other side of my business. Well, I was born in 1993 in Muğla, and I studied architecture as my main subject. And then I started astrophotography in 2015. You can find me on my social media accounts, and you can see what I'm doing actually. At the beginning, I would like to talk about myself, so we can know each other better. And after that, I will tell you about what astrophotography and what landscape astrophotography is, and then we will get a bit deeper into the landscape astrophotography, how it's taken, what kind of equipments we use on the site. So at the beginning, I was always obsessed with astronomy from my childhood and with the night sky. All the photo you see on my screen is actually the first photo I have taken when I started this hobby. I didn't even know anything about the camera settings or anything else. I just went out to the site, and I knew one thing. I wanted to capture the night sky, and I started. After then, it became a rabbit hole for me, and I just got deeper into it. I have a YouTube channel which I shoot some vlogs and some educational content about what I do and what do we do on site. You can check it out whenever you want. There are some useful contents for some educational purposes as well. And we do vlogs with other astrophotographers from Turkey and outside of Turkey. This is one of my vlogs which we took in Isparta, Şarkı Karaağaç. This place is a national park which is called Kızıldağ National Park, and the mayor joined us while we were photographing the comet Neowise. If you can see there is a little dot with a tail on the photo. That was comet Neowise, which was visible 2 years ago. And I also do some astro time-lapse films as well. When I was living in New Zealand, I did this movie which consists of some landscape astrophotography time-lapses. You can also check it out anytime you want. After that, as we begin, we partnered up with Mustafa Aydın, another astrophotographer who lives in Turkey. He lives in Ankara, by the way. And when I was living in New Zealand, he was in Ankara, and we founded this İki Yarı Bir Küre Bir Gökyüzü. In English, it's Two Hemisphere, One Night Sky. We were doing some live streams with another astronomers and astrophotographers from Turkey and outside of Turkey, and we were talking about the subject about landscape astrophotography. And then we had some guests in our live streams. And next we partnered up with Can İneli, who's another astrophotographer in Turkey. And I just moved back to Turkey, so we founded a company called Stellar Experiences, which we give experiences and some extensional courses about landscape and deep sky astrophotography together. The photo behind you can see was from our course in Kızıldağ National Park. We had 15 students who joined us with this adventure, and after that we just went further with the team, and we started doing live streams with astronomers and astrophotographers all about the world. I mean, you can check Stellar Experiences YouTube website as well, which you can see many familiar faces if you are familiar with astrophotography. We had Nico Carver and lots of different astronomers and astrophotographers in our live streams. And I'm also the brand ambassador of Move Shoot Move Sky Trackers, a company who produces sky or star trackers, which we use when shooting photography of the night sky. All right, to begin with, I would like to talk to you about what is astronomy and astrophotography. Astronomy is the science which studies the movements of sun, stars, planets, comets, gas, galaxies, gas dust, and other non-earthly bodies and phenomena. And we astrophotographers try to photograph those objects. Astrophotography is also known as astrophotographical imaging or photography type, which you photograph any celestial objects with anything. When we talk about there are lots of subtypes of astrophotography, which we can start with, of course, wide field or landscape astrophotography. We will get into this in the next slides, but we have some different subtypes of wide field or landscape, which you can call both astrophotography. The first one is you can photograph the Milky Way with different foregrounds or different objects. And secondly, you can photograph the constellations in the sky. And we have meteor showers all around the year. So we have different meteor showers. You can photograph those meteors, or you can even capture them with a video as well. And also we can say aurorae, and which both borealis and australis, also known as northern nights or southern nights. On the next, we have the solar system astrophotography, which we shoot planets, moon, sun, and inside the solar system. They usually use big telescopes who can capture some high frame speeds instantly. Also, deep space astrophotography, we have different subtypes of deep space astrophotography as well. You can photograph galaxies, nebulae, also star clusters inside the night sky. But our main topic today is landscape astrophotography, so we will be mostly talking about landscape astrophotography. As in this example, you can see that we photographed the Milky Way with a meteor on the top. Those birds are actually, this photo was taken by me in New Zealand when I was living in New Zealand. This was a place those gannet birds, also an endemic type of bird, only lives in Australia and New Zealand. So there were like tens of thousands of birds just laying around the edge of the hill, and they just see the Milky Way at the night. There are some equipments we need to use when we are shooting landscape astrophotography. First of all, we need a camera. What we need as a camera, which it can shoot in manual mode and it can shoot RAW. We usually choose DSLR, digital single lens reflex cameras, or digital single lens mirrorless cameras. But nowadays, I mean, with the technology developing, you can even use your smartphones to photograph those night sky, like some celestial objects with some foregrounds in the landscape astrophotography. Secondly, if you're using a camera, an interchangeable lens camera, you need to have a wide-angle lens. If it's fast, it would be better. I will be talking more about that later. And a tripod, as we are shooting very long exposures at the night, in order to capture all those light coming outside from our atmosphere, we need a really sturdy tripod to shoot those 30 seconds, 1 minute, or sometimes 15 seconds. I mean, you can even shoot for 4, 5 minutes, 10 minutes exposures in a single exposure. So you really need a sturdy tripod for that. And a headlamp, which will be very useful when you are trying to find your direction at the night, because we choose really dark spaces to avoid light pollution in order to capture those celestial objects, and in order to see them and in order to capture them. And optionally, you can use an intervalometer, which allows you to control every action of your camera remotely. You can use a cell phone to get benefit of some star apps and some sky charts. Also, it would be useful if you bring a friend with you, as you will be shooting in the dark alone. It would be very dangerous for you. So to begin with, as a digital single reflex, as a digital SLR camera, we prefer to use full frame cameras because they tend to have better low light performance, but you can use anything at the beginning as you start, and if you want to develop it further, I mean, you can just buy more or better equipment after you started. Any SLR camera would be okay to start this hobby, and you can capture the night sky with anything you can, which allows you to control all the settings manually, or you can choose a mirrorless camera as well. And the type of lenses, I would like to talk more about the lenses. The type of lenses we have in the camera industry are, first of all, we have two different types. We have two different categories, actually. The first thing is the lenses are categorized by their focal lengths, and the second is if they are able to zoom or not, if they have prime focuses, or if they have zoom abilities as well. On the focal length side, we have wide-angle lenses, standard lenses, telephoto lenses, and macro lenses. On the other side, we have prime and zoom lenses. In astrophotography, you would like to take a prime wide-angle lens with a low aperture stop. And when we are talking about the focal length, between this is, by the way, for the full frame 35mm sensor. And if you have a crop sensor, you need to multiply this focal length by your sensor size. The ultra wide angle is also known as between 8mm and 24mm. Between 24 and 35, we call it wide angle. Between 35 and 85, which we call standard, they have the similar perspective of what your eyes see. And short telephotos, we have 85 between 100 and 35. Medium telephoto, and we have super telephoto. They all have some different fields of uses. In landscape astrophotography, we usually use ultra wide and wide lenses, but you can even use some standard or short telephoto in order to take your astrophotography next level. But you may need some further equipment, such as sky trackers, when you are using shorter focal length lenses. And also aperture is a huge huge thing in landscape astrophotography, because at night you would like to gather lots of light inside your camera sensor, and the smaller your aperture number, the smaller your f ratio on the lens, it takes more light in a second, I can say, I guess. And we usually prefer fast lenses. When we say fast, it means it has smaller f ratio. And when we are selecting a lens, we usually take account of our budget, the focal length, the aperture f ratio, and we usually tend to use prime lenses. But if you have some zoom lenses, you can also use those. And we use autofocus, manual focus options, because at night you won't be able to use any autofocus while you are shooting any astrophotography pictures. You will need a manual focus, and you need to adjust that manually by your hand. We actually don't need those vibration reduction or any other alternative names of it. As we will be using a tripod. ED, achromatic, and apochromatics are some coatings of the lenses which helps the lens to absorb their aberrations. As you will be shooting stars, they are just like small pixel dots in your screen, in your camera sensor. As the shape of the camera, they will tend to be I don't know how can I say that, get stretched or get their shapes changing. So those coatings will be very useful when you are shooting astrophotography, because they will help your lens to absorb those aberrations, and you will have some pinpoint sharp stars in your photos. And as a tripod, we usually prefer a heavy and sturdy one, as it will be our only connection with the ground between our camera. And they have some different heads which you can use. You can see this is on the right side, it's called ball head, which allows you to rotate your camera in every axis you want. We have some different head types. The most common one is ball head, and it will be the most useful one for your use. And then next, as an equipment, we use headlamp. And when you're choosing a headlamp, it's really important that the red lamp should have a red light option as well. Because the white light, when you turn on the lights at the dark, as your pupils get bigger at the night, you get used to the darkness, and you can see clearly in the darkness. When you turn on the lights with a white light, your pupils will get smaller, and you won't be able to adjust. Your eyes won't be able to adjust to the outside ambience, and so the red light helps you to reduce that. In order to look at your camera, adjust your settings, you mostly use red light on your camera. As you can see, we always use our red lights on site, and especially if you're out with your friends shooting some photos together, it helps to reduce their photos get ruined as well. Optionally, you can use an intervalometer. In the middle of the slide, you can see it's a remote controller of your camera. You can adjust your shutter speed, diaphragm, f ratio, ISO, or any other settings. It usually takes control of the shutter speed though. There are some multiple options of them. You can use some wireless versions as well. A star app or a sky chart will be very useful for you to find your object at the night sky. And friends, actually, we usually say it's optional, but it's always better to go out when you're shooting and have some friends around you. as it might get very dangerous when you're out. So the shooting settings, we always use manual mode on the astrophotography because we don't want the camera to take any actions before we want. So we want to take control of everything everything away from camera. But with the help of that, we can adjust our shutter speed, diaphragms, and ISO settings manually in order to find the perfect exposure settings. And when we are shooting those photos, we use RAW format in order to collect the best data we can have. While we are shooting photography, in astrophotography, we usually say data to our photos, our frames, the photos we take. The more data always better, so you can enhance the details in your photos even better when you shoot in RAW format. As the aperture of your camera or of your lens, we want to use the largest aperture without any aberrations. So let's say you're using a wide angle lens, let's say 24 millimeter f1.4. We always try to avoid using the lowest number, as the aberrations, you can say chromatic aberrations, some coma aberrations, or any other aberrations tend to show themselves even more when the aperture is wide open. So we usually slow down our aperture at least one step in order to get the best pinpoint sharp stars when we are using our lenses. So after we took that, we calculate our shutter speed. There are some rules when you are calculating your shutter speed if you are using a steady tripod shot. The first rule is called 500 rule. Let's say you have a full frame camera and a 24 millimeter lens. The rule is actually very simple. You need to multiply your focal length by your crop factor of your camera and divide 500 to that number. As an example, you can see, let's say we have a crop Nikon or Sony body, and we have a 24 millimeter lens. If you divide 24 multiplied by 1.5, which is 36, and divide 500 to that number, you will have 13.8 seconds, which is the longest aperture you can use without having any star trailing in your photos. What do we mean by star trailing? As the Earth rotates, when you're shooting steady shots from the Earth, you will see in your photo the stars are moving along in your photos. So in order to capture pinpoint sharp stars, you need to get lower from that number, from the 500 rule. As it says 13.8 seconds, we usually get even slower, let's say 10 seconds. And you can use that number to calculate your ISO in the next step. And nextly, we have another rule which is more precise when we are calculating that. 500 rule is the easiest one. You can always calculate that in your head by your own. But MPF rule takes lots of different variables when you are calculating. It takes account of your aperture and the pixel pitch number, also your focal length, your sensor width, and the number of pixels along the long gauge, etc., etc. But there are some online tools you can use while you are calculating according to MPF rule. The results of MPF rules are usually very shorter than the 500 rule. If you calculate both, you can choose any number between those two and use as your shutter speed and try out while you're shooting. And the next thing is ISO. Actually, ISO comes from the film cameras. Maybe some of you may know about them. It was called ASA. Back in the days, they were using some silver halide crystals in order to adjust your lighting, and they have 100 ASA, 200 ASA different films, which they had some silver halide crystals to the sizes of silver halide crystals gets bigger or smaller. But nowadays with the digital cameras, we call it ISO, which basically does inside your camera. So your camera has a native ISO. As an example, we can say your camera has 200 ISO, which is the native ISO. And what camera does when you when you use higher ISO numbers is it amplifies the results electronically, digitally inside your camera components, and it gives you a digital result of an enhanced view. So it doesn't allow you to get more light into your sensor. It just amplifies the coming light by electronically. And nextly, I would like to talk about some examples about what landscape astrophotography, what different landscape astrophotography styles are. This is one of my favorite photos, which I took in the only desert in Turkey, is located in Konya, Karapınar, I believe. There is a dune, sand dune, which has the desert environment in there. And my friend Mustafa Aydın was posing for me, and behind that you can see the constellation Orion. You can always photograph the constellations with some foreground objects. In landscape astrophotography, we photograph celestial objects with some foreground objects around the world. So you can use some different landscape objects. You can use human. You can use some animals. It's all into your composition or your creativity. But we have some different seasons. You can shoot different celestial objects. As in this season, we are in winter, and the constellation Orion is up on the sky, and you can photograph it anytime you want. In the next one, you can see on the right side the Andromeda galaxy, and on the left side of just above the trees, you will see a pink nebulae, which is called the Heart Nebula. And I shot this photo with a 50mm lens, and I also used some buildings as a foreground objects. Differently, you can shoot Milky Way. Milky Way is up in the sky between May and I believe June. No, between May and September, even October, you can see the Milky Way core. I'm not sure if my mouse is visible on the screen. Do you guys can see it?
No, we can't.
Okay. So there is a dark place. It just looks like a dark horse in the middle of the photo. It is called the center of our galaxy. We also say the dark horse nebula to that.
Sorry, we can see it now.
Do you see it? Okay.
Yes.
So this is called the dark horse nebula, and this place is known as the center of our galaxy, the core of the Milky Way. So you can photograph the Milky Way core, which is the most, which is easily photographable for at any level of any level of photography. In the summer, you can always photograph that. Which you can find with some star chart applications, or you can even see it with your naked eye at the night sky. This was also taken in New Zealand. We have a different placement of Milky Way, which we never see the Milky Way in this direction, like parallelly to our horizon. This is a view from the southern hemisphere, and also another photo of the Milky Way galaxy, which you can see different nebulae in the which you can see different nebulae on the photo. My cursor is not visible now. Okay. On the right side, you can see some blue nebulae, and on the left side, inside the Milky Way core, you see Lagoon, Trifid, Eagle nebulae, or some different ones. There are lots of different celestial objects in this part of the night sky, and this is the most fun and the most photographable object in the night sky. And you can even do some panoramas at night sky and do some big shots. Milky Way has a very large angle in the night sky, so you will always need a very wide angle, ultra wide angle lens to photograph that. And those photos are taken, consist of some panoramas. Some of them even has 6-7 different parts merged together in order to achieve this field of view. And yeah, also you can shoot the aurorae in the northern or the southern places in Earth. This is on the horizon, the yellow, green, and the red lights are the southern lights, which we also call aurora australis. On the top left side, you see a big dust, big blue dust, which is called Magellanic, big Magellanic cloud. It's the satellite galaxy of our galaxy. It's the satellite of Milky Way. It's a dwarf galaxy, and on the right side you will see a red nebulae. It's called it's the biggest visible nebula in the night sky. It's only visible in the southern hemisphere. It's called Carina Nebula, by the way. And here you can see the southern lights with the different colors. Most of you are familiar with the northern lights, which they are basically the same. They just occur in the different polars in the Earth. These colors are coming from the elements inside the aurora activity. So you can see different colors in aurora in the northern lights. You can also see pink, purple, red, yellow, and green ones. You are usually familiar with the green ones, but we have different colors of aurora as well. And those photos, I would like to mention these photos as some of the new starters and some of the beginners would like to use their cell phones when they want to start. So I shot this one with my cell phone. I mean, if you have any cell phone which is capable of which allows you to take control of the settings, camera settings, your shutter speed, ISO, or your f ratio, you can use them to shoot the Milky Way or some stars as well. So I use the Xiaomi phone to photograph that, and I use some different stacking methods in order to reduce the noise in the photo. And these two also have been taken with a camera, also taken with a cell phone. On the right, I use the sky tracker with my cell phone, and I took multiple shots in order to get rid of some noise from the night sky. And I shot the night sky and the foreground in different exposures and then merged them in order to achieve the best results. And yeah, I guess. And nextly, I would like to talk about the stellar experiences. Just mention about a little bit more. So in stellar experiences website, you can see in the blog, you can see we have different parts, and we have a blog page which we used to post actively about cameras, lenses, and how to shoot the Milky Way, or what the techniques or different gears we use. And you can see lots of different contents inside the website and also inside our YouTube channel. If you would like to learn more or connect or get into contact with us, you can always use our website or our social media. And I guess that's it. If you guys have any questions, I can take. And thank you so much for listening to me.
I may have a question.
Yeah, for sure.
First of all, this was a very lovely presentation. Thank you for it.
Thank you.
You said you lived in New Zealand.
Yes.
If you were to compare light pollution in Turkey and New Zealand, would you say in some place it's easier to find a place that has sufficiently low light pollution so that you can take photographs?
Okay, so if we compare New Zealand with Turkey, I mean, there is a huge gap between those countries because New Zealand has the New Zealand has the square kilometers of land, just 1/3 of Turkey. But we have population of 80 or 90 millions in Turkey. I don't know the exact numbers as of today. But New Zealand has only 4.7 million people lives inside the country. So they have really dark skies, and they have the largest dark sky reserves inside the country. Also, it's a country that takes actions against the light pollution. They just fight with light pollution. They have different night sky reserves and different places. They don't have any light or any civilization between 20 or 75 kilometers radius. I mean, there are some locations which you don't have any people living just in between your 75-kilometer radius. It's really dark. It's a really dark country. But Turkey also has advantage of dark places as well. I mean, when we compare Turkey with Europe, we have darker places than them. I can show some light pollution maps to you, and you can see that Europe has no dark skies at all. So we really have a lot of advantages and a lot of beautiful places with less light pollution, which we can photograph or even observe the night sky with our naked eyes. All right. Any other questions, guys? Oğuz, Eren, Saklı.
In the talk, you really emphasize on the danger of being alone in the outside.
Yeah.
Do you have any stories about any dangerous thing happened to you or someone you know?
I mean, a lot of things happened actually. It always depends on where you shoot photos, what kind of sites, what kind of places you chose. I mean, lots of my friends had get attacked by some bear or some different wild animals, you can always see them at night when you're going out. If you're camping at night, there will be some problems you may face. I mean, even at some places, people from those locations, we go out to the villages and mountains, and those people sometimes scare that you will steal something from them. You will do. They see you as a thief or a dangerous person, so they may just bring their rifle and direct you into your face. So yeah, we faced with that a couple of times actually, those kind of situations. And also always tell to police or gendarme when you're going out shooting, because if they know, or also you can talk with the köyün muhtarı. I don't know how to speak that English, tell that in English. Always talk with them and say that you will be shooting some photos at night around your village, so that they know if somebody just complains about something, or if somebody see you at night with a light in a distance, they will they may see you as a danger.
Thank you.
No problem. İlayda Altıntaş, I guess, is asking a question. Do I need to allow that, or do you guys allow that?
It's already allowed, I think.
Okay.
It's open now. First of all, thank you for this presentation. And I think you mentioned about the ISO value, but I might miss. What's the ideal ISO for the night shots for DSLR or mirrorless cameras?
Okay. So, I mean, I cannot say this number is the ideal ISO for a camera, because when you are adjusting your settings on the camera, first thing you need to adjust is your aperture, because you know the number. The second thing is shutter speed, and the third thing is ISO. Yeah, you know the maximum amount you can use on the first two, and you need to adjust your ISO according to your histogram actually. On your camera screen, you always need to check out the histogram and see the values, like how the light comes and how well you are exposing your photo. We usually identify our ISO just checking the histogram every time we shoot a photo. So you can check that, but most cameras are capable of shooting above 1600 ISO. You can use 3200, 6400, depending on your camera. If you're using a full frame camera, you can use between 32 and 6400. But in crop sensors, you may want to, you would not want to go above 6400. So 3200 is a sweet spot, I believe. Which always depends on your camera, by the way. Some cameras have better ISO performance. Some have some has worse low light performance. So it depends on your camera always.
Okay, thank you. And are you doing bracketing or just?
You mean exposure bracketing?
Yes.
Just like a HDR, exposing it like a HDR on different exposures and
yes, different exposure times.
I mean, sometimes, but it's not very often, because you can use some single exposures in order to get those results. The photo you can see on the screen is a result of a single exposure actually. It's only one shot. I believe I shot that at 16,000 ISO. I'm not very sure, but sometimes we shoot sky and foreground differently while we are using sky trackers. Sky tracker is a device that allows your camera to track the object at the night sky. So it moves when you're shooting, and it just follows the celestial object you locked your camera on. And when you're locked and taking a very long exposure photo, let's say 4 minutes, you will have your foreground getting trailed. So in order to compensate that, we take a different exposure, usually with the same settings, but we sometimes change it. It all depends on the scenario. We sometimes use those exposure bracketing as well, and then merge those photos to get the final result.
Okay, thank you very much.
You are welcome. Any other questions would you guys like to ask or say anything? I don't know. Anything at all? How was the presentation, by the way? I mean, it's been a very long time since I haven't been presenting anything in English for a long time. So was it fast or was it okay? Is there anything you didn't understand? I guess Ilayda is raising hand again. Ilayda?
No, I just clapped.
Okay. Thank you.
It was really good and understandable, hocam.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming, and I don't think there's any more questions.
Okay, if you guys have any questions, you can always contact with me from my social media accounts. I would be very glad to help you guys with anything.
Thank you so much for coming, hocam. Oğuz, can you share the name of the social media account and our links as well? We will share your accounts.
Okay, no problem.
So that people can reach.
Sorry, I couldn't understand the last.
Yeah, we will share your account links in here as well so that people can reach.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Yes, hocam, we shared now. I think we are all right. Efe, would you like to close?
Okay, we can end now, I guess. If
Okay.
there isn't any more questions, and it looks like there isn't. So thank you again for coming for this presentation.
Also, thank you guys so much for inviting me for those presentations. Thank you again. I hope you all have a great evening.
Thank you. I am ending the session now.
Okay. See you.
See you.